I've been debating whether or not to call this video like why all of my FPV videos are a lie, or I've also been thinking about like making it like a series of pro tips. I can't decide which exactly. Oh, what if I just called it 5 reasons my freestyle edits are a lie? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is 5 reasons why my freestyle edits are a lie. Before we jump into this video, I just wanted to lead off with just a quick thing. This video is talking about my stuff only. I'm not talking about anyone else in the industry. I'm not talking about anyone in particular. I am just talking about me. So if you watch this and try to like transcode it to somebody else or think I'm talking about somebody else, like that is not true. It's just about me. So I've been wanting to make this video for a while. I'm not really sure why I want to. Like, it's not like I'm giving away secrets or anything like that. But I do want, I've kind of developed like a series of different little things that I like to pull together and work on to make my freestyle edits stand out just a little bit better. And so I wanted to go over each of those and then just kind of, give that to you so that you have something that you can be thinking of when you're making your videos. First, expose your video properly. Use a filter, lock down your shutter speed, force your ISO. So this is obviously a GoPro Hero. This is a 6. I don't have a 7 yet. I will be getting one as soon as I kill this one. It's already in the process. The screen here is damaged. These are called the Freewell polarizers. I think I've made a video about them in the past. I'll make sure it gets linked. Essentially what it does is when you're running your camera, you want to be running at a shutter speed that is basically double what your frame rate is. So I usually shoot 4K 30 super view, so I want my shutter rate to be 1/60. And when you get that, you kind of get this milky, smooth, juicy, like all of those adjectives coming together footage without ever having done anything else. So like if you did one thing, honestly, to improve a freestyle video, it's go in and add a filter, make sure that your camera is locked into a certain shutter speed so that you get that consistent, smooth feeling. You get an exposure that's always the same, and that will make everything look 1,000 times better. I'm not saying it's going to make you fly better. I'm not saying it's going to get rid of jello or anything like that, but using a polarizer and stopping down the shutter speed a little bit will definitely improve the picture that you get out of a camera like this. So I just jumped out here in the driveway really quick to kind of show you how I would go about the process of like picking exposure on a GoPro. So just bear with me here. So what I usually shoot at is 4K 30 super view. Or when I'm running at that frames per second, I want to be running a 1/60 shutter speed. So I've got the shutter speed locked down to 1/60, but when you look at this picture, you can see that it's so blown out. Like everything is just so white, and you can't even see what's going on around. And I know that the way we're doing this is not really helping, but you get the idea. So if we go in here and we drop the shutter speed down, you start to see that the more of the picture comes back and it looks even better the way that you would want it to look. But what happens is that when you're running a so much higher shutter speed, the image just doesn't look as good. It looks really crispy and janky, and it doesn't have that smooth, juicy kind of look. So what you can do is instead of putting the shutter speed up to something crazy, you can add a filter. So right here I have a series of filters for the GoPro ranging from an ND32, ND8, 4, and 4. It's supposed to be two 16s, or a 16, 32, 8, 16, and a 4, but I've lost one of mine, so I just have two 4s. These have the same effect as changing the shutter speed. So if I put this on here, it's basically just sunglasses. But what happens is that the camera is still running at the same frame rate. So now you'll have this well-exposed, beautiful video that's all running at the proper frame rate. So when I'm going to be shooting and I'm really paying attention and taking my time, I force the shutter speed. I drop my ISO as low as I can get it. For the most part, if you're shooting in the daytime, you can almost guarantee that you'll set a 100 ISO. But if you're shooting where there's a lot less light, you might have to bump that up. But the goal is to have ISO as low as possible. Shutter at 1/60. And then I'll look at the image and say, okay, now that's too exposed. And then I'll add ND filters based on what I see as looking the best out of the camera, like this. So that's the process that I usually go through to set up a shot with proper exposure on a GoPro. Second, shoot in GoPro Pro Tune flat color, and then use a LUT in post to bring out the best dynamic range that you can get out of your camera. GoPros basically look at the entire picture, they look at everything that's around, and decide what is the best exposure based on all of the light coming in. Now, if you force a shutter speed in an ISO and you shoot in a flat color profile, you have the most control over the amount of light that's getting in. And if you control the amount of light, you get a much more consistent image. Now, it can get pretty nitpicky, and for the most part, GoPro does an awesome job. But if you want to get the best possible image out of it, shoot in flat, lock down the exposure so that you have decided what you want to be the amount of light getting into the camera is, and then apply color filters afterwards, and that will give you a much better, cleaner, more dynamic image out of the GoPro. So in terms of color correction, I'll show you what I do here. So typically I'll create what's called an adjustment layer. You can do that down here, File, New Item, Adjustment Layer, and that just creates this basically like null object that kind of floats over top of everything. And I'll usually add 2 layers. One of those is going to contain my LUT, which is called lookup table. It's just a way of storing different information that will basically be applied by default to a file. And then the other one I'm going to actually do my color correction on. So the reason I have these split into 2 is because typically LUTs are like too strong of opinion for me. So I dump the opacity down to about 50%, and then I add the LUT. I've got some downloaded here. I basically searched for GoPro Pro Tune flat color LUT, and it just gave me this file here. And now you can see that even just doing that added a lot of color. So if I hide this, it gets really gray. Now it's really colorful. But now to me, this looks a little bit too dark, so I'll just come in here and bring in like 0.3 of that. I like to have a really contrasty thing, or really contrasty look, so I'll make those darks a little bit darker. Typically I find that footage favors the highlight, so I bring the highlights down and bring the shadows up just a little bit, and I use a little bit of contrast to compensate so that I make sure that everything looks nice. Bring the whites down a bit because that also helps with the highlights. I typically don't mess with the blacks. I don't like to bring those up or down because it starts to get too dark and contrasty or too gray. So I just usually leave that right in the middle. And then almost always I'll add some saturation with a LUT, maybe like 15%, maybe 20%. And for this video, I thought it was a little bit, so I shoot with a fixed white balance, and so for this I just bumped up the warmth a little bit, so it was a little bit more of a sunny day almost. So now if I just go in here and I turn that on and off, you can see it's really blue. It's not bad, but then you add that in there and it's like, oh yeah, look at that. And so it's not, you know, you're not lying. That's what it looked like on the day, and I just kind of modify my colors to make it look that way. So shoot in Pro Tune flat, and use a lookup table as well as some basic color corrections. You can get a lot more out of your picture. When you're flying, pick the way that I describe it is be decisive. When you're flying, when you're making a decision on a line, when you're picking something, just make it look like you've already decided what you're gonna do. So like, I know that's not always the case, and it's not always the case that you did actually decide what you're going to do ahead of time. But if you, the best look for a video is you don't want to be searching for your next thing. You want to just connect. So we'll say, like, for example, I'll be doing a split S and say it's like slightly at an off angle. It's not like just perfectly straight. You know, what I'll do is I'll come up and I'll keep that angle all the way through into the next maneuver and then make a turn with that. So like, rather than making it 2 separate things, just tie it both together with that one move, and that really brings everything together. And you can see when the flow breaks up because of, not totally planning that thing out. Okay, so this is a video that I put out the other day. It's called Feel the Rhythm. And the reason I called it that was because I thought there was a lot of good moments that like timed well with the music. And so I want to really quickly show you like how I achieved that and how I made sure that they work. So the song's filling in the background, and then, Okay, so that's the first thing that I see there. So there's this big, awesome, dramatic intro sting where it goes, "Wah!" And the way it was when I laid this track in here was just totally wasted, right? So you're going, oh, sorry. The way I laid it in here is totally wasted. There's nothing happening. Like, there's just this big epic moment in the music and then nothing happens. So to fix that, I still wanted to keep that same amount of prop, like just warm up at the beginning, because I like to kind of build in with the, just the props kind of warming up and like thinking about taking off, and then here it goes, and then fast forward, and I actually sped it up by about 3.3%, and watch what happens. And you just making that small little change times it to the music. Now watching this power loop, I actually sped this current clip up so that when I get to the power loop and I'm like halfway through it, it has that another big dramatic like bah, and I wanted that during the power loop. Watch. So now this current clip is sped up by 0.5%. Not a lot, but it brings it and ties it together with this next sting here when I almost crash. Now this clip is slowed down by almost 10%, so that when I get to this next section, watch. And this is sped up so that when I go through the tree here, it just kind of ties right in with that music. It makes it just, it's so much better. It's not that, you don't need to be flying like to listening to music, and you don't need to keep it like a total linear timeline. Just speed it up a little bit, slow it down a little bit, like make it work for your video. And, it's 10% different, but who cares? It's not like you're like setting race times or something like that. Like, just play with it, have some fun. You leave a lot on the table when you wait. Here's another one. So I sped the previous clip up by, come on, not much. No, I slowed it down by 5% to make sure it timed in there. So again, all this to say, like, I encourage you to play around with the timing of things so that it lines up with the music. So like, there's a lot of work that's gone into this beautiful soundtrack that you might be wasting a little bit. And so if you just kind of fiddle with it and make it work for you, that's going to make videos that much better. So like in this one, for example, I put in the CinemaScope, those like black letterbox bar things, which are kind of a joke, like that it's cinematic-y. And they're like slowly closing in, and then as soon as the video starts, just get rid of them. We don't need them. Yeah, I love it. It's so cool. So, it's just have fun with the frame, like mess around with things. Like, don't be afraid to speed things up, slow things down, and make it work for you. Fifth, and I think the most important thing, is to draw your satisfaction from within. Be happy with your own work. Don't be worried about what other people think. Like, it's your creation. It's essentially your art. And in order for you to be happy with it, you have to derive your own satisfaction from it. If you are expecting people to watch it and you get that negative comment, you get that dislike, you get that annoying stuff, like, you're just going to get frustrated and you're never going to do it again. Posting videos needs to be self-satisfying before you expect it to be satisfying to anyone else. So essentially what I'm trying to say is, like, if you post a video that you are happy with and someone, rags on it or calls it out or something like that, it doesn't matter to you anymore, right? You are still happy with the work that you've done, and you can ignore those comments. But if you post something that you aren't satisfied with and somebody says something, well, now they're just validating something that you already knew, but you didn't take the time to go fix. So like, more than anything else, like, I desperately want you to be satisfied with the work that you do, and I want you to be happy with it. And then the rest doesn't matter, because you know what you value and you know that it looks good. So yeah, that's 5 reasons that my freestyle videos are a lie. I hope that these are useful tips for you, things that you could be thinking about when you're putting together your edits. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Let me know if you have any comments, concerns, frustrations, clairvoyances, whatever. But in the meantime, stay flying.